When I was in high school, where we had to choose like a career field, and I chose labor and delivery nurse. And as I started looking into it, and doing reports and watching videos and things, something about it never felt right to me. It always felt too medical. And even back then, in the earlier days of YouTube and online videos, I guess, you could see obstetric violence. You could see a lot of forcing women to do things that they weren't comfortable with, and it just never felt right. So I remember one day I was on a computer writing a paper or something. Over in the sidebar, an advertisement popped up for Ina Mae Gaskin's spiritual midwifery. I kind of made a mental note, and I ended up going home and actually purchasing the book and reading it. I think that's probably what actually opened the door for me as far as out of hospital birth and looking at birth as something other than this almost medical procedure that had to take place in a hospital.
I decided that with our third, due to my quick labor, that I wanted to stay home in my own space and everyone come to me. That's where my baby was conceived and thought about.
There was 6 years in between my hospital birth and my home birth. So as I got older, I started realizing more of what was important to me and how I wanted less medical intervention. And at the time, I thought everything at my hospital birth was fine at that moment. But then reflecting back on it, I realized there was things that I was unhappy about. I just wanted to be supported in a different way. First home birth, I knew I was going into it as a single mom. I didn't have a partner that was going to be there for me. I wanted to have a midwife instead of an OB, so I could have like more of a relationship with my provider, not just seeing a different person every time.
And I went to a prenatal appointment. I think I was like 8 weeks. I went to a local hospital, to their OBGYN, and I was set up with a midwife. Never forget, her name was Arlie, the midwife that I saw. She was so nice, so kind, and I really wasn't expecting that. I almost kind of went in there like already kind of defensive, already had this line in my head of what I was going to say and how I was going to defend myself. And I kind of dropped the bomb that, I won't be birthing here. I really don't even want to come back after this. I really would love to have a home birth. And I was totally expecting, the old, oh, that's not safe. Are you sure? Have you researched it? Babies born at home die, or mothers who home birth die. I didn't get that at all. I actually got great feedback, and I remember my only concern telling her that there's no way I would be able to afford it, because at the time my husband and I were living in a very small one-bedroom, third-floor apartment. Even though we were living in town, we were kind of living off the grid. Neither one of us had internet or anything like that. We were sharing a flip phone together. I was like, I wouldn't be able to afford it anyway. I'll never forget, she walked out of the room, and then she came back with a business card. It was Lizzie's name and number, and she said, just call her, you'll be surprised. And I did. After meeting with Lizzie the first time, I loved her. We clicked right away. She's actually old order Mennonite, horse and buggy, so very, very natural. I'll never forget the first time we went, my husband and I, we walked in her front door, and there was a room full of Amish ladies sitting around, and we kind of looked at each other like, oh wow, like I wonder if we're the only non-Amish, clients of hers, but turns out we weren't. She has many.
I found a midwife through word of mouth due to the regulations that in the state of North Carolina that it's illegal for you to be attended by a midwife to have a child at home. You can give birth at home alone, but you can't have someone attending you to make sure you and the baby are okay. I wish my midwives would be legal, because every woman should have the choice to stay where they are most comfortable to have their baby.
Both times my midwives had a list of things that are required to have, so I purchased all those things. For my most recent one, I just went on Amazon and got almost every single thing because I was so tired. She has a list, it's like a list on a website where you order, and I think it's like $70 or something, and it comes with a whole bunch of the needed supplies, and then there was like other things you could get on top of that. I also made my own birth kit, I guess. I got like these special postpartum panties that I found on Amazon that are amazing. and some special pants for myself, a water bottle, because when you're breastfeeding you get thirsty, nipple cream, your just Earth Mama Now products, just little things for myself, some snacks and Gatorade, things that I knew I would want to have after I had the baby.
I had a birth kit. I ordered one with my first. So with my second home birth, we mainly used Chuck's pads, the cord clamps, gloves. Mainly I used the mesh underwear, the peri bottle, Chuck's pads and gloves, and the birth pool liner.
It just all turned out really amazing, as I knew it would, being with her. First time around, I started my labor, a few days before my due date. Just your typical twinges, whatever, and I, like most women, their first time around, jumped the gun. Called Lizzie, ran to her house real quick, and she checked me and I was only 2 centimeters, and she I'll never forget, she kind of chuckled and, said, go home and come back when it's real. You'll know when it's real. A couple days had passed. Finally, things really started to pick up. So went back to Lizzie's, and when I got there, surprisingly, I'm pretty sure I was still only a 4. That kind of shocked me. Here I had been in labor for these past couple days and I'm only at a 4, which is actually typical for a first-time mom. We went into the birth room and Lizzie already had the birth pool filled with, warm water and had everything set up for us, and the lights were dim and it was just really calm and relaxing. And I remember the first thing I did was I got into the birth pool, and I actually ended up staying there for hours, and I mean hours. I was there, probably at least 4 or 5 hours. Lizzie kind of encouraging me to maybe get out and move around or labor on the toilet or something, because, I think my body was just getting too comfortable in there. So I did eventually get out, labored on the toilet, walked around a little bit, did some squats at the end of the bed with the bedposts. And I remember at one point my husband was kind of under the bed looking up, and I remember him saying, I can see his hair. And I hadn't even realized at that point that I had progressed that far. Then it kind of all became real. My midwife kind of standing there cheering me on and rubbing my shoulders. And that was encouraging compared to in a hospital where you have coached pushing and, kind of forced to being on your back. That never would have worked for me. I pushed like that for a while. And I think I got back into the tub maybe for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I knew it was go time. Got out, and Lizzie actually had an old wooden birthing stool. So I kind of propped that up against the sofa. My husband sat behind me, and I kind of squatted in between his legs on the stool. And it wasn't much longer that I felt the ring of fire. So I knew it was real. I remember reaching down and feeling his head in this squishy ball, and I thought, that's not a baby. Like, what is that? There's no way. This little hairy, squishy thing. I remember Lizzie saying, yes, it is your baby. Finally, his head was out, and I remember at that point, I kind of had like an out-of-body experience because my body had never been pushed that far. I'd never been in that kind of, I don't want to say pain, but, intensity. Just kind of remember accepting whatever comes out of this will come out of this. Right about that time he was born, he shot out, my husband caught him, and then they passed him up to me. And I remember at first I really didn't, not that I didn't want to hold him, I was just very shocked at everything, and so it took me a while to actually hold on to him. This second baby was a little bit stubborn, and he stayed Frank breech right up until the very end, which kind of caused a little bit of an issue because I don't think Lizzie was comfortable doing breech, because I remember her kind of encouraging me to maybe seek help from OBGYN. That was really a downer, and I was so scared. At the very, very end of my pregnancy, I think it was 39 weeks in a few days, Gideon decided to flip. We were all really shocked. So I got to have Gideon again at Lizzie's house, and at this point she had moved to a new house, which was even better and more beautiful, still out in the country. And for his birth, I decided to labor in the birth tub the entire time. I remember I actually rolled up a washcloth and stuck it between my teeth and labored like that the whole night. Didn't make a peep until my body started pushing him out, and that was it. 4 a.m. was when he was born. It was a relatively easy birth. compared to the first. And yeah, it was really great, and just as much excitement when he was born. Pregnant with Nuna, which was my third, and called Lizzie. Had the normal meetings with her throughout my pregnancy, and then at the very end I thought, you know what, I'd like to do this at home this time. I kind of have the hang of this, not that it would matter if I didn't. Decided that I would like to do it all on my turf this time, and she was completely cool with that. That birth was probably, I don't want to say my favorite because that makes me feel bad for my other births, but probably my most empowering birth.
My birth experience was the best thing that I could have asked for. The ladies who were with me while I gave birth just backed up and held space for me while I brought both of my sons into the world, once in January of 2016 and then again in February of 2018. Even when things didn't exactly go as planned and things got a little scary, they were confident and in control of the situation.
I used meditation a lot. I had an app on my phone. It was called Gentle Parenting, and I paid for like a 1-month subscription so that I could use all of the guided meditations. And there was this woman, and she had this really calming voice. And so I put my headphones in, and I was just so focused on what she was saying. And like, even when I was on the toilet pushing him out, I still have my headphones in listening to my guided meditation. The third one, it went by so quick. I felt like, yeah, there was a lot of pain, but I didn't have time to like get in my head and develop these techniques. And there was so many people there, and that's such a big support system. I was just like talking with them. I mean, besides when I went into transition, then it did get really intense, but I guess the best pain management was the pool and the water. That felt really good, and being able to move, change positions. And so if one way was feeling uncomfortable, I could change it up. Visualization. Every time I had a contraction was visualizing the baby descending and like his head moving down. That made me feel good about the pain, I guess, because I knew that the pain was a good thing. That meant that the baby was moving down and my body was opening.
Shortly after that, my placenta was born, and I did bleed a little bit more, I think, than Lizzie was comfortable with. I remember her walking over to her desk and then coming back with a syringe, and you know, at that point I didn't even care what was going on. I was starting to fill up with, you know, oxytocin and whatnot, and I remember her pinching my arm and giving me a shot, and I said, was that Pitocin? And she said, yeah, because, you know, you're bleeding a little bit more than I like, and everything was fine.
Because moms should have the choice, the autonomy to choose where they give birth, how they give birth, who they give birth with. If you want to do it, find someone who supports you and do it.
Read birth stories, listen to birth stories, just take in as many stories and as much information as you can. It helps you realize that things can go 1,000 different ways, and to kind of just expect the unexpected and be okay with that, instead of just thinking like, I'm going to have my water birth and it's going to be perfect and that's what I want. It helps you realize like anything could happen, and you can hope for a water birth, but your baby might be born on the toilet, or you might have to go to the hospital, or whatever it may be.
You're almost done, babe. He's right there. Oh, there you go, pumpkin. Oh.